it's just amazing how interesting this has become. If you are taking part in our Liberty Summer event, Lynn Monet and I are doing a series on, we're calling it Liberty. We are watching Liberty, the PBS show from 1997. It is available on the intertubes and also in archive. We are then watching Sons of Liberty, the series, and then Turn, the Washington's wonderful spy ring, the Culper spy ring. So during last night's show, the American Revolutionary War Fun Facts and Ghost Stories with Steve Stockton that appeared live at 8 p.m. Eastern on Monday night, last night, we were talking about many things, but one of the things we brought up were some, fun facts and different things that went on with the, of course, the beginning growing pains of the Revolutionary War. So within this, we're learning a lot about the different characters, and one of the main characters, Samuel Adams, who was a terrible brewer, but a wonderful politic. He was wonderful in rhetoric, in rabble-rousing, in propaganda, in getting a stir, causing something to get the word out and spread the word, because he knew how important it was to get as many people on board as possible with the things that were coming to fruition. Sam Adams put out, I believe the day before, in the local paper there in Boston, Mass, to what is the equivalent of almost, a text message, or, dropped it on Twitter or X or TikTok or whatever, and, like, hey, flash mob, let's all meet here this time, and, let's see what happens, kind of thing. And he knew full well that they were going to go and dump the tea into the harbor. Again, like the pictures show, and, and everything else, of course, propaganda is just huge back then too, and Paul Revere was also very good at this. They did dress in somewhat of disguise, and the whole point was everybody knew who they were. Nobody was telling tales, and they very quietly went up, broke the lock, went in, and they replaced the lock. By the way, they were that meticulous about doing this in a peaceful manner. They didn't bust up the crates and a whole lot of rabble-rousing. They just quietly dropped that tea into the harbor. They knew it was going to be important to keep this peaceful. However, it was not the only port this was done in. It was done in many ports, much smaller quantities of sure. They can't even really tell you how much exactly was on, depending on what you read, but it was quite a bit, and it did hit the king pretty hard in the pocketbook. It was well over $1 million of what it would have been today, and it had nothing to do with the price. Britain's kind of sort of looking at Parliament. It's looking at it like, well, we're going to go ahead and send this tea over. They drink a lot of tea over there. We're going to get them to them at a good price. And even with the tax, it's going to be cheaper than what they normally spend. But people like Edmund Burke in Parliament in Britain are saying, you just don't understand the people. It's not the amount of money. It's the principle of taxing them without their say. And they're getting a little tired of that. And it's they just want a say in their own governing. And the more the king and Britain, the older, bigger brother, really almost the parent, would say to this rebellious teenage colonists that, no, you have to, get in line and do what you're told, and we're governing you from over here. And the colonists just weren't, most of them, only a third at this point, of the population of the colonies were like, no way, we're done with this. And then you have 2/3 that are going, I don't understand what the problem is. England, we're English, and we're fine with everything. We're enjoying, the imports and the money and everything else. So it was a tumultuous time. But among that, we were looking at this little announcement that Samuel Adams put out, and to get people to come to the port, come and see. And we noticed that the lettering and the font was funny. So Steve and I were talking about that. I can't always go back and see the live chat. People get annoyed at me, like, didn't you see that last night in the chat? I'm like, sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. And even though I have the box checked on, content creator on YouTube Studio to replay the live chat, it doesn't always work. So if I save my StreamYard, I can sometimes go back and look at the chat, and I did that this morning, and I found some wonderful information there. I often do. And from Jack Kilowatt and Ian and Vixen and Aunt Edna and Scott and everybody that was putting out information last night, here was Steve and I had a question about inside of within the words, if they used an S, looked like an F. And Steve and I were asking, I wonder what the rule is there, because it seems like if it's, like I said, within the word, it looks like an F. On the outside, if it's a plural, it looks like what we're familiar with, an S. And I happened to look at the chat, and I saw that Ian and Jack were talking about it, amongst others. And Jack here has from Overholt, Overholt, a little bit of information about this, and I thought it'd be interesting because with this summer series coming up on Liberty, we're going to be pulling out all kinds of, facts like this, and I think they're all important. And I hope you're interested. And, if not, you're going to pull out your own stuff, your own things that you're interested in too, and we hope you'll share. So Jack says, and I quote, "The long S and the more familiar short S represent the same sound. And the rules for using long S versus short S varied over time and place," Overholt said. "So if you look closely, the F is not an F because the horizontal line doesn't go all the way through." And Steve noticed that last night. "The long S started to be seen as antiquated in the late 18th century," Overholt said, "and it began disappearing. Different sources blame different people for the death of the long S." Well, long may it rest, because it looks funny, but isn't that interesting? And then Ian says based in Greek. Jack says back actually based in Roman, Ian. And Ian says Latin was the language of the clergy, Greek was the language of the scholars. So, interesting. I mean, it's interesting to go back if you've ever studied, like, say, the Salem witch trials or anything like that, and reading what they wrote in the ye and the thou and the this, all that tis and all. It's wild how our language has changed, and so many melting pots of information. But here it was so not basic. It's definitely a collaboration, this language and the way the font is and everything, of up to this time. And I just think it's interesting how people, we don't need that anymore, let's change that. No, we were going to change this. But even now, Steve and I were talking about how even Halloween can be accepted in several different spellings and the way it's put in. And jewelry is still double L's in Britain, where here we have one. I went around with that a lot, being the fact that I do wire sculpting jewelry. So it's very interesting to look back at these little things. I hope you will continue to input. I think all of it's interesting. What were they eating? What were they, what were their favorite recipes? We know that Dolly Madison's favorite flavor of ice cream was oyster, and that was not uncommon then. So different things are just so odd. And but I find what's most interesting is what seems to be the same. We're still human beings. We have so much more in common than we have in differences, and I think that's the most important, that everybody can have their freedom to be themselves and still be a part of this wonderful collective of human beings on this earth at this time. I love you all. I hope you are celebrating your independence in a peaceful manner, and I know 4th of July is really the noisiest time, but that's okay, because freedom is something to celebrate. I love you all. I hope you'll join us for our Liberty series with Lynn Monet and I this summer. And this is just a taste of the interesting little tidbits you're going to pick up along the way. Thank you to my wonderful chat and all that the wonderful minds and all that information that's out there. It's just terrific to be able to collect in one place and have these discussions and It's just so much fun. So thank you for being there. Thank you for participating. Thank you for the information. And keep your lights on. Be good humans. Happy 4th of July.